recording right now. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. So first of all, hello everyone. Thank you for joining in tonight. I'd like to welcome you all to the 2020 Associated Students of Whittier College Presidential Debate. This year, we will be recording the debate on Zoom and uploading it to our social media. Any candidates are also allowed to ask for the recording to post on their own social media as well. So I will be moderating the debate tonight and look forward to hearing from all of you. I wish you all luck. So first, I would like to give both candidates a chance to introduce themselves and the position they're running for. Let's start with Grace.
Hi, everybody. My name is Grace Hagan Martin, and I'm running for ASWC president. I am a second year. I'm majoring in political science and minoring in business. That's a little introduction about me.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Jesse?
Hi, my name is Jesse Eccles. I am running for ASWC president. I'm an international student and athlete, and I've been Pasala rep on Senate for 2 years. And I'm a third-year child development major and political science minor.
All right, thank you both. So before we start the presidential debate, we're going to take a moment for our vice president candidate, Amber Brose, to make a statement and allow for anyone in the audience to ask a question.
Thank you, Cole. So hi, everyone. My name is Amber Brose. I am running for vice president. I'll give a little intro as well. I am a second year. This has been my second year also sitting on Senate. I'm a poli-sci major with a philosophy minor. Very weird things. So anyways, so the reason why I am running for vice president is because I want to impact the student body in and outside of Senate. I want to lead meetings in an organized way and make sure that everyone's voice is heard. So my goals are to uphold the Constitution and what it stands for and encourage senators and students to continue writing bills and initiatives. Also, I want to add an amendment in the Constitution about like special circumstances. We're all going through a lot right now because of COVID-19. And because of it, like the Senate, we had to think of things like on the spot, and we had to make like new solutions as like things came about. So I want to add like an amendment in the Constitution so that say this ever happens again, Senates down the line can have like an outline, like a way to like follow things. And then lastly, another goal I have is to continue more politically engagement in events because elections is right around the corner. And not everybody knows that you can get like an absentee ballot. Nobody really knows like the difference between like a Republican and a Democrat or anything like that, like what proposals are going out like in their city government. So I would like to continue political engagement in events. And so, yeah. Any questions?
So just as something we're going to be doing for this debate, if you have a question, you can go ahead and use the raise hand function in the participants page on Zoom. It'll allow for you to put a little hand emoji next to your name on the participants list, and then I'll call on you. You can ask them your question directly. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Amber? Okay, thank you, Amber, for that statement. So with that, we're going to be moving on to the presidential debate. This debate will focus on current topics related to the campus climate, as well as topics related to each of the candidates' individual platforms. So we will begin by asking a set of 10 questions, which both of you will be given 2 minutes to answer. I will let you know when the 2 minutes have passed. After the 10 questions, we will open the floor for any questions from the public. So just to keep this consistent, we can alternate who answers first. So for this one, I'm going to allow for Jesse to answer this question first, and then from there on, we'll go Grace answers the next question first. So the first question is, we'll begin asking what motivated you to run for ASWC president?
I think the thing that motivated me most to run for the ASWC president is realizing that I can make a difference on this campus and that there are things And there are aspects that I see and that we hear that, you know, a lot of that it's hard for students to kind of get out there and advocate for themselves, and being that person that kind of, you know, has been around, has been in advocacy committee, you know, working in the dean of students, and kind of, you know, getting to know the campus. I'm realizing that there are a lot of things that are happening, you know, within the students, within administration that, you know, aren't really being dealt with. And I understand that it all it takes is one person. And obviously as ASWC president, it's not just my job to kind of like, you know, just be a leader and like get other people to do things. It's that I need to be there, and I need to be involved as well. You know, talking with the president is super valuable time to go and actually like, you know, let administration know that students are liking what's happening, or students are not liking what's happening, or, you know, students don't feel appreciated on this campus. And, you know, I hear that all too often. So I feel like, you know, as president, and what motivated me to run is that I can make that difference. I can mobilize people on this campus, and I have that ability to go around to speak to people, to find out what's really, really happening and actually get something done.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. So Grace, what motivated you to run for president of the ASWC?
So there's many different reasons why I'm running for ASWC president, but one of the main reasons is that I am really passionate and committed to students. As you may know, have been community rep for the last 2 years, and in that time, I've had numerous programs and events throughout campus. And through that experience, I really learned my love for students. And in developing community within the commuter students rather than a disconnect with the population, I experienced firsthand the fulfillment that comes with serving and helping others. I'm not running for this position just because of the title or anything like that. I'm running for ASWC president because I am passionate about students and I'm committed to connecting and advocating for students. I see that there's so much potential in what we can do as Senate, and I'm ready to take that hands on.
Okay. Thank you, Grace. So the next question is, what is the most pressing topic you will address with ASWC Senate related to student life? And what role does ASWC play in this?
So one of the, can you clarify the question real fast?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question was, what is the most pressing topic that you think is impacting student life on campus right now that Senate should address, and like what role would Senate play in addressing that topic?
Okay, so I think as far as Senate being a role in what we can do, I think Senate has a really big impact on the school and like the departments and being the liaison between students and administration. So there's a lot of range that we can do. But what my main platform is making sure that students feel that they are advocated for. So making sure that we are doing the best that we possibly can to communicate student voices. And as well as trying to make sure that we're communicating with students with the information that we have, because I think Senate gets a lot of important information and it kind of gets lost within the meeting minutes or the tweets, and we need to make sure that we market that as best as possible. And also with elevating student life. So that with engagement, as far as increasing student engagement, trying to promote with current infrastructure that we have in place. We want to make sure that engagement is as best as possible for students. So working with the departments like the Office of Student Engagement, and developing innovative marketing strategies that we can implement as a student body, and working with programs that genuinely pique students' interest, and trying to get cross-platform collaboration. I know with my work on WC The Rock, we really did that a lot, and making sure that clubs and organizations are collaborating within each other, because that's when events will be successful, engagement will be successful, communication will be successful if we are implementing those strategies. Again, like connection across campus is really necessary for Senate.
Okay. Thank you, Grace. Jesse, the same question goes to you. What is the most pressing topic you will address with ASWC Senate related to student life, and what role does ASWC play in this?
Yeah. I guess throughout the past week, and this has been my main point the whole time, is kind of this big umbrella term of like student engagement, as Grace said, but understanding that like the things that student engagement kind of encompasses, and that is like, participation and diversification of that, of that participation, making sure that, we're getting different people to go to, events like Spilling the Tea. We're not getting the same people going. And I see that coming to life through student engagement. I've talked a lot about this idea I have, and of creating groups within student life body organizations. So that group would be like, you know, it would be like, the international club, one of the sports teams, women's basketball, sustainability club, and groups like that would get together and they would support each other, get people to go to each other's events, go to each other's sport games. That way we're getting school spirit. People are going to these games and saying, wow, people really want to come out and support, our women's basketball team, our men's football team, our women's softball team. And then we also get those same people and those athletes to go to things like, the VIP club meetings, or, Spilling the Tea on diversity, or, DI week and stuff like that, and getting a greater diversity in the people that are going to our events. Senate has the ability to create those kinds of groups and create those kinds of like bills and abilities for students to actually engage. The other thing is advocacy. Advocacy is probably like my biggest, like my main topic that I've always tried to focus on since I like joined Senate and I got involved. I've been on the advocacy committee. I'm on the Gender Equity Resource Task Force, and that's one thing I really want to get done, is make sure that we get that Gender Equity Resource Center like on campus and they're serving students. But my main point is that unless students are like unified together and students are supporting students across all walks of student life, no way are we ever going to have, students banding together to get something done from administration. And we need to get those students together, and we need to get that student engagement up so that we have students supporting students, and we have, non-Black students going to these, these listening sessions for Black students and helping advocate for those people. And we can't, I don't feel we can.
Thank you, Jesse. That was 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Cool.
Okay. Okay, so the next question is, what is your simple idea to improve Whittier College? And this goes to Jesse.
Yeah. So kind of building off that, my simple idea is just student engagement, getting to know your students, building those connections. There's a lot of different things on campus that I feel like are very exclusive. Societies have been looked at as very exclusive, and I don't feel like that's the case. Like, of course, there's like, the bidding process and stuff, but societies over the last few years just haven't been engaged with the community. They haven't been throwing events. And I remember I've talked to people, and they said that one of the requirements as a society, and to be registered as a society every year, you have to throw an event, for the student body, that the student body can attend. And that's something that isn't really like, it's not police, but it's not really regarded. It's not like you have to do that. It's not a requirement anymore. And I think that's not really up to standard. I feel like if people are interested in societies or interested in athletic teams and walking on, and they're interested in doing whatever they want at Whittier College, and like that is Senate's mission statement, is that we offer, a diverse, and we offer those opportunities to students that want them. And I feel like students just aren't getting that right now. So diversifying those connections that we have, and we have connections with athletes and organizations that deal with advocacy, and building those connections and actually feeling like a community, and actually feeling like, the people that you're walking around and seeing, and getting rid of that attitude of seeing people, or seeing people you've seen around and not saying hi. It's really awkward, and it just doesn't kind of, do the school justice. And I feel like I've enjoyed my time here, and I've met so many cool people, but not everyone gets that experience. And I'd love everybody to, love this college just like I do, and enjoy their time here, and look forward to coming back, help with that retention rate. So it's student engagement all the way, getting people together.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. The same question goes to you, Grace. What is your simple idea to improve Whittier College?
I think my simple idea kind of goes with my slogan, for students, for you. So that's just an umbrella of saying, I want student engagement. I think that's very important. I've done that with my roles with WC The Rock and implementing marketing strategies for that, and trying to get people to come to events and make sure that's happening. Also with my commuter event, I agree that student engagement is most important. I think simplicity on my platform is that I want to continue the trend of communicating to students, because I feel like there needs to be a framework first when student engagement comes around. So framework would be cross collaboration of clubs. Jesse named a ton of clubs that need to be more in collaborations with each other, and making sure that we're not just repeating events, but we're making things different. We're changing things up for the student population. I think that's really important because that will increase in student engagement throughout. I think also one of the biggest things with student engagement is reaching out to student leaders and who do they know and who are they reaching out to, and making sure that we're implementing that as well. So framework is most important when coming to having student engagement, as well as making making communication, as well as advocating for students. It's all under an umbrella effect. So for students, for you would be my simplest line for what I can accomplish.
Okay, thank you, Grace. So this question is going to go to you again, Grace. How will you work with Senate's advisors to bridge the gap between the ASWC Senate, administration, and the student body?
Okay, so I think that's what's so important about this role, is that you are that position. President is the way for meeting with advisors, meeting with higher administration, meeting with students. So as far as executive board, I'm excited for the future. I've already had experience with working with a team and managing a team. I will do my best to plan, communicate transparency for the table as well as the executive board. I believe I will meet regularly with the advisors to seek guidance and support to navigate through tough situations and conversations with students and administration. I think it's important for students to know that we are there for them and that we are for them. I think that's going to be a real key to this, like next year, and because of unprecedented circumstances. Just not only developing leadership within Senate, but also providing practical training for students. So how to execute their responsibilities. I think it's important to foster relationships with everyone, as well as holding one-on-one meetings. I think planning on bonding events as well for the table, and making sure it's important that executive board, we're all on the same page as well. I think having that key leadership and reaching out to students is going to be really important for that seeping through the entire Whittier College campus.
Okay, thank you, Grace. The same question goes to you, Jesse. How will you work with Senate's advisors to bridge the gap between the ASWC Senate, administration, and the student body?
So obviously, yeah, the same thing, like making sure we're all on the same page. But the first one is obviously being accessible, understanding that when we go and we interact with our advisors and then we interact with administration, that we are working on part of the students. And I think the most important thing that I can offer to that is the voice. You know, going out and talking to students and not actually being, you know, afraid to speak up. And I find that over the last year and what I've developed as a leader is actually understanding that I have a voice. And when I feel like students, you know, aren't getting a fair shot and people are not really allowing students, you know, to get the best experience out of their college education, you know, I'm going to speak up. If someone comes to me and says, you know, this is something that is going on, you know, I'm going to do something about it. I remember last year during the elections and before that, you know, eBoard always talks about being transparent. So I went away and I thought, you know, how do I actually do something about transparency? And I did something. You know, I wrote the event transparency bill because that was an issue that people continually talked about, but I didn't feel like, you know, anything happened. Danny came in and talked to us about our Title IX and our sexual education on campus. And the first thing I did was I went to athletics. I said, hey, I don't think that what we're doing to educate our athletes on you know, Title IX procedure and about how to, you know, rightfully treat people on our campus and in real life is effective enough. And so I went to them and I did something. I feel like having that ability and just going and doing something like I've shown that I've done in the past is what's going to, you know, get those things to happen. Is that when students comes, that we go to our advisors like Christine and Deanna and we say, hey, this is what's happening. It's not good, and we need to do something about it. Being able to go to the president and say, hey, we've had students come and they're really not happy about this. And I feel like I have that voice to be able to just go and tell it like it is and actually really get something done.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. So this question is going to be going to you again, Jesse. The president is responsible for coordinating and leading all of the other executive board members. How do you plan to lead your executive cabinet?
Yeah. So obviously, I've been an athlete for a long time, you know, various teams events, and obviously gaining that leadership and having to work with people is something that I've developed, you know, a lot over time. And what I've seen a lot from like past e-boards is that, you know, we have the meetings and then e-board kind of hangs out afterwards and and they're friendly. And I feel like when it comes down to it, when we're in these Senate meetings and we have our executive board, I always feel like there's a little bit of disconnect between executive board and, you know, their idea and then what they want for the table, because executive board they're there to guide the table, and I understand that. And I think it's about making sure that everyone on eBoard's on the same page and that everyone on eBoard understands who's on Senate, what we're trying to do with our events, and actually making sure that that not just as myself reaching out to eBoard and making sure they're doing things, is making sure that those eBoard members are reaching out to their pods and that people are replying in those pods, and that when things go into those pods, that things are being done. You know, I'd love to say that just because I say something's going to happen, it's going to happen. That's just not true. I understand that I'm going to have to work tirelessly, and I'm going to have to, you know, not just talk to the Senate table, but continually remind, eBoard and even myself, and take that in myself as not just demanding things of people, but actually sitting down and saying, this is why this has to happen. You know, what are your feelings about it? How do you think we can get this done? And I understand that all these people running for these positions have great ideas, and they have their goals and their ambitions, and those are super important. And that learning about everyone else's experiences and learning about those people on eBoard and actually understanding how we all think is going to bring us closer, so that we can guide the table better and the table can ultimately guide the student body better.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Now for you, Grace, how do you plan to lead your executive board?
So I've actually, as I said before, I've been co-director for WC The Rock for 2 years. So I've already done this for 2 years. I know how to manage a team. I know what to implement. I know how to make sure that people are actually doing what they need to do. I lead by example most of the time. I try to do my best work as best as I can to show, hey, this is what you need to do, and hey, this is what you need to do. I'm also really big on feedback as well, making sure that students are getting feedback from their pod leaders and how we can be better as an executive board. Jesse said it, pods are very important. I don't think it's as utilized as we could be. I think there needs to be more training and more framework, and I can do that. I think as well as making sure we're all on the same page as an executive board, and making sure that we're all having the same goals remaining. I mean, I read time remaining, sorry. Making sure that we all have the same goals and making sure that we are implementing those and making sure that we're all on the same page is very important to a successful e-board and a successful team. I also believe that within that team, there needs to be communication throughout. I think that that's really important as well, because within leadership, you got to know what you're doing. And so communication within that is really key as well. I think also what eBoard has a really big access to is advisors and making sure that they're getting the guidance that they need. I think that's really key and important to executive board. And I think that we can implement that even more. And making that even more transparent with the Senate table in general.
Okay. Thank you, Grace. So I'm going to allow for both of you to answer this next question, and then we're going to go ahead and restart the Zoom meeting so that no one gets cut off in the middle of their answer. Okay, so this question is going to go to you again, Grace. How will you work with organizations under Senate to foster collaboration and partnerships?
So as I said before, WC The Rock really implemented that for me. But I do think there's a lot of ideas that I have. I think that clubs and organizations need more support with Senate. I think there needs to be more collaborations with even within that. I hope that what I can implement is Senate trainings for clubs and organizations. So basically having a training for these clubs to know how to fund their event, how to market their event, how to get resources from other departments. Because I feel like with all clubs and organizations, they don't have as much as support because of the Office of Student Engagement having a lack of staff. So Senate needs to play even a bigger role because we do have that staff full now. And so now we can even implement more student engagement and cross-platform collaboration. I think that even implementing just like infographics, being transparent with the Senate body within our platforms, and then also with cross collaboration, I feel like there needs to be more student leaders advocating for other events that are happening. So just making sure that all senators on the table know what's happening with the campus and communicating that with their constituents. And then that will, I think, promote student engagement as well. Once we create that framework of training and making sure that clubs and organizations are supported, also having more support with maybe even one-on-one meetings with clubs that aren't getting that support, and also meeting with OSC regularly to make sure that we're supporting clubs and organizations is really key. And also smaller governing bodies need support as well, and I think that we can definitely do that within the next year.
Okay. Thank you, Grace. So this question also goes to you, Jesse. How will you work with organizations under Senate to foster collaboration and partnerships?
So what I've been doing over the past week since the 9th is I've actually been trying to meet with as many people as I can from these organizations. I actually, luckily there's one of the captains of the dance team actually still lives on campus. I was actually able to meet with her face to face. And what I found is actually by sitting down and talking to these people one-on-one and sitting there and saying, just like, I have these ideas, how could these ideas help you? And what are you planning on doing like throughout the year or in the future that Senate can actually help you with? Not necessarily just like me as president, but what could Senate help you with? And by sitting down and actually talking to people one-on-one and getting their ideas and getting their feedback and letting them know things in advance, I got a lot of really, really key information. I felt like rather than just going in and then feeling like, okay, I'm someone that's just on Senate and I was just coming to them and telling them, this is what I'm doing. It felt more like a personal conversation, and I'd obviously like to keep doing that. I know Treasurer Delgado and then obviously Treasurer Estrada, there's the committee, or the Treasurer Committee, so all the treasurers of all the big organizations on campus would come together, and I think that's cool. I think there's also a leadership committee is also another really good idea. So you're having meetings with those leaders on campus, but I think just talking to these clubs and orgs, and whether it is myself or it's another member of e-board or even someone on Senate that's passionate about that, it's just having Senate go to these people's meetings and having Senate there and giving that representation and saying, hey, we're here, we're listening to you, we actually understand what's going on in your club because we're coming to, we're going to one meeting every 2 weeks, or we're going to meetings and we're seeing what's happening. And I feel like getting that like actual in person and not just kind of doing it and saying, hey, like, when are your meetings, we want to send a representative, rather than trying to make it feel forced and like we're trying to get them to do stuff, is like just going out and being present in the community and being present at these meetings and giving all of these clubs the personal time to understand that we do care about them, and then hopefully that comes back to us and they suddenly get they're understanding that ASWC.
All right, thank you, Jesse. That was the 2 minutes. Okay, so so now we're going to be restarting the Zoom call. Just in case the Zoom call information isn't the same, we're going to be having Fiona posted on the Instagram if it's not the same, but if it is, just go ahead and rejoin with the same information. All right, so let's pick up where we left off. So the next question is going to be going to Jesse, and this question is, what plans do you have to foster student involvement in Senate, not necessarily organizations, but students individually?
So that group plan involves Senate as well. So Senate would be one of those groups that is not only helping, plan and implement getting these big groups together on campus, but also being a part of that. And the reason that I obviously want Senate to be a part of that is that when they're coming up with these ideas and they're coming up with these planning stuff, senators, have had that experience in marketing thing and marketing these events and getting these events to happen and knowing who to talk to and where to get supplies from and all of that. So having to be involved in those mini groups and also getting senators out to go to those little meetings means that, each senator is going to get, one-on-one time with not just their constituency when they go and do things for Senate, but people outside of their constituency. I understand that senators, they have their constituency and those are the people that they deal with, but, realistically, they also need to understand what's going on with everyone else's constituency. They just need to know what's going on in the student body. So getting senators involved, outside their normal people and increasing, again, the diversity of the people participating in different events and clubs is how I see on the individual level, how that works at campus and around campus, in the CI, outside the spot. And I encourage, and I think it's going to take a little bit more from me, and rather than just like waiting for people to come up to me, is like going up to people and saying, hey, I have a meeting with the president on Wednesday. What do you, what's been going on? Going up to people and saying, hey, did you hear about what happened in the Senate meeting on Monday? And I think having that personal connection and actually having people understand that, like, yes, you're a leader on campus and you get things done, but you're just there to listen to people is like the biggest thing that I think is going to be important. To get that engagement and get that student involvement. And it's about building those connections. It's like, hey, I know Jesse, I talked to Jesse, he told me about this event, this event actually sounds really cool, I'm going to go, and then I'm going to bring my friend. And then they bring that one friend, and that one friend knows someone else that's gone to that thing because they're in that group. They might have been a football player, but they happen to know the person from, the theater or the VPS, and they happen to know that person. It just building those connections and having people know more people on campus, I think, is how we're going to spread that individual, like, I guess, responsibility and that individual knowledge on campus, and how we're going to build that engagement. I think the more people we know and the more...
That was the 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Jesse. So this question also goes to Grace then. So how do you plan to foster student involvement in Senate?
So luckily in my position with commuter rep, I think it's 54% of the population is commuters. So I had to figure out ways of how am I going to connect one-on-one with these students, or how am I going to figure out what these students need as far as constituency. And so I implemented a commuter survey that literally went out to the entire student body, and I got feedback from that. I think also I agree with Jesse's point with meeting one-on-one, and I'm really big on that as well. But also, how are other strategies that we can use to implement student voices? I think my goal for me is meeting one-on-one with at least 2 students throughout the student body each week. I feel like that's really important for fostering student engagement, as well as making sure that we're advocating, communicating with students, and being transparent. I think that's really important. Going back to my example with commuter students, I know how to make sure that students are feeling engaged within my events that I've created. I created the commuter lunch, and we had fun raffles and like other engagement activities that I can implement to the entire school. I feel like within that, making sure that we're connecting one-on-one with those students, as well as fostering community, is really key to engagement with students in general.
Okay, thank you, Grace. So this next question is also going to you. And that question is, both of you have experience in ASWC Senate. Describe one time you were presented with a challenge and how did you overcome it?
One of the biggest challenges I faced was actually this previous semester. I was trying to create a commuter a commuter drive-in movie, and just logistically, the institution couldn't do it, and it was just really hard to make sure that all departments were working within each other. I saw flaws within that, so I know what to implement as far as next year, making sure that we can support those sort of cool events that we have and creative events. I also think that one of the biggest challenges I faced on Senate was trying to make sure that students felt like they were advocated for. I heard a lot of students, like, their concerns were just flowing through the institution. It wasn't like gravitating towards a certain department. It kind of goes, I feel like with all student voices, it kind of goes to one department. It's like, okay, go see this person. I want to make sure that students are coming to Senate and we make sure we're getting their resources as soon as possible. That's also one of the biggest challenges that I've faced, is that trying to make sure that we're getting these students resources. And I also believe within that, I hope that students feel like they're advocated for once I create a framework for that, and that students feel like they're communicated with transparency involving Senate. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Grace. So this next question also goes to Jesse. So describe one time you were presented with a challenge in your position and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge that I've had in the Pasala rep was, I think when we had, that student come in and talk about the state of our kind of Title IX training and education on campus. And, I went to those advocacy committee meetings and they had these great ideas to like implement a, first year program and students teaching, the first years in their INTD classes. And so when I went to athletics and I sat down with them and I kind of said, hey, like, what we've had in the past, we've had people come in and we've had these trainings in the past. They were would you be willing to like fill us in on all that? And they're like, yeah. They gave us the breakdown, they gave us the basics, and I said, like, I still feel like this isn't as inclusive as it could be. We're not getting the vast range of what Title IX is. We're not we're not getting across to these people that, perpetrators and victims can be anyone and that sort of stuff. And they were kind of like, oh, we're going to keep trialing this. Like, thanks you for your input. And kind of they weren't really listening. And so having to go back and actually, like, I guess, get the respect of the people first and actually, like, have them listening to you when you go to them about things is probably the biggest challenge. And really the way I kind of dealt with that is that it's just persistence. I had to just keep going and keep going to them and keep talking and saying, hey, like, like, you talked to me about this and I really don't feel like that's rational. I really don't think that's going to get across to students. And going to people and just putting in the work and putting in the effort and not really taking no for the answer, I think is the biggest thing I got out of that. If I really do want to, like, support these students. I want to make this campus safer, and I can't do that unless we drill into the administration that students need to be heard, and that students' voices are important, and the things that we're saying, aren't stupid, and that just because we are students doesn't mean that we don't know what we're talking about. I think that's probably the biggest challenge that I've faced, and I saw that when trying to get the cones just to put outside the tennis courts. That was a big thing to do in an advocacy committee. Trying to talk to campus safety and sort out that road situation was really, really difficult. They don't respond a lot of the time. So, being persistent and making sure that we just get things done, I think is the biggest thing I've learned, the challenges.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. So this next question also goes to you. So since Whittier College has transitioned to online learning for this semester, a lot of students have lost the community aspect associated with college. What will you do next semester when students return to reestablish that sense of community?
So the first thing I've looked into is actually is there used to be a lot of more like welcome back events that used to happen. I know there were some things that societies did, and there were apart from orientation, there's nothing really for returning students that like really welcomes them back. You know, they get back and they move into their room and they see orientation going on, and it's kind of just it. I'd love to come together and actually throw something really early on, whether that's, you know, something not like the fair they do at orientation, but you know, a lunch during orientation that actually gets new students meeting returning students. You know, it took me such a long time when I came here to actually learn who the returners were, who my upperclassmen were, who was actually involved in what. And I think it'd be really, really cool to get more of those older leaders into orientation and a part of orientation, but actually, you know, have those returning students go to a lunch and meet the new students and get them more involved, so that we're, you know, it's not just new students and returning students, it's, you know, we're still all together. The other thing I want to do when we all come back is I'd love to I'd love to kind of look at a way to kind of join everyone together in this, and like see what people have learned and what people's experiences over, you know, like with the coronavirus and how they dealt with it. You know, understanding that, you know, if there were students on campus that, you know, had family members that were lost, that we understand, that we, you know, don't make jokes and stuff like that. I feel like when things happen like this, there are always people that are insensitive, and I think making sure that we deal with this together, and that there's a sort of event that, you know, we can come together and see, you know, this is what this person dealt with, and, you know, I didn't deal with that I was very fortunate, and this person was, you know, really unfortunate. I think coming together and bonding over something like this and understanding that we all are going through this is probably super important as well.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. The same question goes to you, Grace. How will you reestablish that sense of community next semester?
I wanted to address one thing with Jesse's. I think returning student lunch is great. I actually did that with the commuter lunch during orientation. I had returning commuters make sure that they were talking to new commuter students and making sure that they had some sort of community within that, and making sure that they knew welcoming into the campus what challenges they may face. One of the biggest issues that we're dealing with right now is COVID-19, and this pandemic is not just going to end after regulations end. I think it's naive for myself and the institution to think that it'll just be gone. I think the effects of this pandemic are far greater on the institution and more intensive. So this next year is going to be very unprecedented, as we will be facing unique circumstances for each student, as well as each student will find different situations as far as maybe financial uncertainty or declining mental health or difficulty with academics. It's going to be another transition. And I hope that ASWC and the institution at large, we must be prepared for supporting students in whatever position they might find themselves in. As ASWC president, I will work directly with all the departments on campus and not limiting to the counseling center, the business office, CAS, even the president, to ensure that every department and staff is ready for another transition, to promote students and provide empathy. I think the biggest thing as student leaders is that you got to make sure that you are empathetic towards others' situations. And I feel like that's a really big need. I know in the business office, it's been historically proven that it's just different every time, and students don't feel like they are supported as much, and we need to change that. I hope in this next year we can provide healing for students and making sure that they are fully recovered. And I'm confident that I can provide that for the student body as well as much more.
Okay. Thank you, Grace. So this is going to be the last question before we move on to questions from the audience. And this question is, why should students vote for you? And this goes to Grace.
Yeah, I think there's one of the main things for me running for student body president is making sure that I feel that students are feeling advocated for, students are feeling communicated with, and students are feeling elevated. And I've done that with my work experience on WC The Rock, commuter student. I've also been on the strategic task force, so I understand that bigger implications with the student body as far as an institution. I believe that for me, why people should vote is that I am very driven. I make sure work is done. Within my position as commuter rep and also with WC The Rock, I made sure work was done, and there was a lot of change implemented within that. I want to make sure that students are getting that one-on-one within Senate and student life, and I believe I can provide that.
Okay, thank you, Grace. Now for Jesse, why should students vote for you?
I think the main reason that students should vote for me is that I'm here to get things done, and I've heard about problems, and I've gone and I've done things to rectify those problems. It's not about just sitting there thinking and talking and going. It's about just instantly going and just saying, even if you have an idea, just going straight and getting something done. I don't want to be that leader, that president that isn't is just super formal in their role. And I don't want to just have these meetings with students. I want to be able to just walk around and have students stop me and just talk to students whenever they want. I want to be that face around campus that is smiling, that lets people know that I'm not just here for them, but they can come to me. I've worked on advocacy committee, and getting the resource center task force is one of the biggest things I want to do. I feel like there are a lot of students that could really get a lot of support, and that we aren't supporting by not having a gender equity resource center. And I'm not on the task force, but I understand that Senate voted on that. We put money towards that, and I want to make sure that Senate is getting those things done, and that when any issue comes to light, that we're acting straight away, and we're getting all across campus. We're not just going to the administration, and then we got to make sure that we get students involved, and that we're getting students together, and that when these things come up, we have students supporting students. And by going out and talking one-on-one and just getting myself out there, I feel like that's the best way I'm going to do that, and that's the best way we can look to do that. I want to be here for students. I love this college. I feel like I'm at home here, and I want other people to experience that. I want people to come in, and I don't want people to think about transferring out, because I want them to see how great this college is, how great this community is, how great the programs that we have, and how great it would be to improve those. And when they see those improvements, I want them to think, wow, this is a college that's on the up. And maybe there are things that aren't so great right now, but I feel like with the way that everything's going, and the way that I've seen when my first year, my second year here, or my third year, that this is a place I want to be. I want to turn Whittier College into a home, just like I felt here. So that's why I think people should vote for me.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. So now we're going to be opening the floor for the public to ask questions. So just again, please use the raise hand feature on the participants page, and I will call on you. If you don't feel comfortable asking the question yourself, you can send it to me privately through the chat function, and I'll ask it for you. So we actually did receive an anonymous question. So the question was, as an executive board member, it is important that you are unbiased and fair in meetings. How do you plan to do this when directly dealing with concerns, organizations, etc., that you are involved with? And this question will go to Jesse first, since you were the last one to answer on the last one.
Something that I feel like is really underutilized, and that we don't do enough on Senate, is that we don't have enough abstentions. I've been someone that consistently abstains from voting, especially when it's like I don't vote, even if I'd personally like to vote yes. I know that I'm involved in these things, and that I make sure that I abstain. I feel like that abstention is something that isn't really used enough, and I feel like there are a lot of us that are involved in things that we vote on, and I feel like it's something that isn't used enough. I also feel like that again, on the kind of personal note, is that there is we get into the point of personal feelings. I feel like a lot of the time we have a lot of discussions on Senate that do get kind of personal, and while I understand that we're people talking to people, is that we have a greater purpose. So I think having more constituent engagement and actually getting our constituents to the meetings to actually also get their voice out there, not just give their voice to their representative on the Senate table, but getting those people to the meeting so that they can actually, personally get their point across without having to put senators in that situation, because a lot of the time it isn't personal, it isn't, they're not, they're voting because that's what the constituent says, but it's so hard to tell. And I'd love to get more constituent involvement so that we don't have that issue of not knowing or getting too personal, because we can put that onto the students that, that also want this change and that we are advocating and speaking for.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. The same question goes for you, Grace. Would you like me to repeat it?
Yes.
Okay. So as an executive board member, it is important that you are unbiased and fair in meetings. How do you plan to do this when directly dealing with concerns or organizations, etc., that you are involved with?
I think one of the biggest things on eBoard is you're not able to vote. So I think that making sure that we are communicating clear and precise information to the overall Senate body for their voting is kind of key to that, remaining unbiased, making sure that we're stating only facts, not trying to create some personal opinion about something, making sure that we're trying to be as unbiased as possible. I feel like with voting, I think it's really important when you are voting on the Senate table to know that you are not abstaining, but actually voting, making sure you're going out to your constituents and representing the people that you do, and making sure that you're getting that information. I think that's really important within voting as a senator, and I feel as making things unbiased as well. Understanding that your position is holding with all organizations, not just the ones you come into contact with, but every organization on it within the institution. So making sure that you are remaining unbiased is really key to making students feel like it's very transparent and that it's accurate information that's being portrayed.
Okay, thank you, Grace. So I'm gonna allow for Fiona to ask her question now, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, guys. So I've been blessed to be on Senate with both of you for the past 2 years. So I have a question. What have you done in your current positions for your constituents that you're most proud of?
And then this one will go to Grace.
Yeah. Yes. So currently in my position, okay, let's take it back a step. So I got into the position February of my first year as commuter representative, and I kind of hit the floor running. I created this survey for students to get feedback of when commuters were on campus and where were they located from and what do you want to see on campus and what can I do to make a bigger impact. So I did that survey, as well as when I got that survey and when I got that feedback, I made sure to implement that with my programming that I had, because a lot of students felt a lot of disconnect with other commuter students because there wasn't any programming, any events just catered towards them like there is for residential students. And I felt like that was very important. So within that role, I created commuter lunches. I've done multiple. Because of COVID-19, I wasn't able to it this year, but I do plan on implementing a commuter appreciation day where annually every year students feel appreciated. So that will be in the next meeting that we have for Senate, making that proclamation. And then also implementing in my position, I tried to make sure about marketing so I created a social media platform for marketing for commuter students, just for them, having that catered towards them. And I think that was really important as well, because that does create a sense of community, that you're not alone on campus. You're not the only commuter. There's 54% of other commuters on campus. So just in my position alone, I created that and implemented that.
Okay. Thank you, Grace. Jesse?
Yeah. So one thing that I did, and I did this last year in my first year, is I had actually planned and organized a dinner with the president for all the for representatives from every athletic team to go to. That didn't end up happening last year. It was all planned, all organized, date set, food all catered, and then what happened was that the coaches hadn't sent like emails out to their students, even though I'd like sent them like 2 or 3 emails. So I had planned and done that. And part of my role is athletics, and that was to get more students and more athletes to get, to interact with the president, not just get to know her, but also like have that one-on-one and talk to someone that wasn't just their coach or wasn't the head of athletics, and people that they felt like they couldn't talk to. Something else I did also, I went and talked to athletics about Title IX, and doing that was actually moving from a general Title IX education process to actually coming up and having specific groups like male identifying athletes and then female identifying athletes, and then having LGBTQ identifying athletes, and giving them education specifically towards that population. So the one that we had for male identifying students was, what was what is toxic masculinity? How does that look? How do we deal with that? And how does that, come into life in our college life? And I think, going to them and talking to them and coming up with that new plan, helped our especially our male identifying students actually be engaged in a Title IX education. I felt like there were more people listening and taking it seriously, and that we were getting something that was like actually worthwhile. And then obviously the other thing I did, and this wasn't just for sports students, but this was also like for athletes, was the transparency bill. Students were constantly complaining, where is this money going? How much did we spend on WITFest? Why is this happening this? And so my point was that, whenever money is spent, requested, and sent out through Senate, that all students would have access to that, so that they don't have to sit there and go through the trouble of, asking a senator who then gets directed to Jose, who then gets directed to, people in accounts payable and stuff like that, and having that.
Jesse.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ariana had her hand raised. Then I have a couple of anonymous questions that have come through, and then we'll get back to the people who had raised their hand. So Ariana.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my Wi-Fi keeps cutting out, so I hope this gets through. But you both had really great answers to some really difficult questions. They're all really impressive. My question is for Jesse. How do you plan on balancing like dealing with a sport and going to practice every day and taking on the very difficult and time-consuming role of president?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The one thing that I've worked on personally throughout my time here is time management, organization. I love my last 2 semesters. I've been taking 16 credits, on top of sports, on top of, new member education last semester. And throughout my time here, my grades, my athletic performances have continued to grow every single semester. And while those are, yes, they're time commitments and I have to do them, I've been doing them for the past 3 years. I'm so used to, I wake up in the morning, I have my schedule and everything, my whole day is planned out. So, while yes, it's a time commitment and I have to, make sure that I'm available, I have that planning down. I have, my days planned, I have my weeks planned, and I have them planned like months in advance. So I know when everything is, and I know that, I'm going to be able to do a meeting here and I'm not going to be able to do a meeting here. And I understand that, all of these things are important, but, I have the time and I'm not spreading myself too thin, whatever I feel like, I want to do when I want to do something that just comes out of my personal time. When I want to go and when something happens, I want to have a meeting with someone because it's important and I feel like, students need to be advocated for. I'm going to take that out of my personal time because I have no problem with that. So I have, you're right in the fact that there is a lot to balance, but I've been balancing it perfectly. I made Dean's List last semester. That's something that I feel is actually a strength, and it's not going to be a problem for me at all.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. We're going to go to an anonymous question. The question was, attendance at meetings has lacked in the past, and knowledge across the student body about the inner workings of how Senate functions has fallen short as well. How do you plan to turn these trends around? And we'll allow for Grace to answer this question first.
I think that's a great question. I think that the problem with Senate meetings, I know for me, I'm a commuter student. It's hard to get to meetings at 7 o'clock at night. I have family at home. I know other commuter students have different situations at home as well. I believe that making sure that we're as transparent as possible. So making sure that we're putting out information that is very digestible. I think marketing is really, really key with making sure that students are coming to meetings. I think making sure that we're utilizing our social media platforms. So creating infographics, creating little videos to just show like, hey, here's this big thing. I think that WITFest meeting got a lot of publicity because of social media and marketing that. And students came out for that meeting because they knew that that was something that they were passionate about. So we just need to make sure that we're implementing that more throughout the year and throughout all meetings.
Thank you, Grace. There was another question, an anonymous question. This one was, oh, okay, yeah. For Jesse, you can actually answer this last question. Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, okay. So something I've wanted to do for a little bit, and you know, we kind of do it, is actually offer incentives. I thought it'd be really, really cool to actually, when we send out the minutes and we send that out to the student body, to maybe actually have some sort of giveaway of like, you know, of coming up with something that actually gets people to read through the minutes. You know, what was one important thing that was mentioned in last night's meeting? That would have, you know, you read through the minutes, they say, oh, you know, the senator brought up Title IX education, and that would, you know, put them in, and that would put students into a draw to, you know, when, you know, small gift cards and stuff like that, and that would happen weekly. You know, that helps students that aren't able to get there at 7 o'clock at night, or aren't able to you know, go to other constituency meetings. It keeps them like active and understanding what's happening in Senate. I think that's one idea I had. And the other idea is actually by making like Senate events like, I guess, more available. You know, I've had ideas about, you know, having special meetings, you know, in the quad or stuff like that, or on special days. And I guess, you know, we do a really, really, really good job of getting student present at events, like, you know, the State of the Senate and stuff like that. But I feel like we need this. I think Senate itself needs to get out there more and less of a Senate. So rather than having these like super serious formal Senate meetings and then trying to invite people, you know, we have a less formal Senate meeting where, you know, we maybe have a potluck, and it's like, you know, it's not on a Monday, and we have students come and bring food. And rather than having, you know, these super serious business meetings where people sit through other people talking for hours and hours, I feel like it'd be really cool to just kind of break that down and understand that not every student, you know, not every student like can get involved, or not every student, you know, wants to get involved or gets involved the same way, and everyone, you know, is different. So I think making it more accessible by, you know, taking down that kind of like I guess the tone and the stigma of Senate meetings would be also really good to get people there, you know, not just on a Monday at 7, but at other points.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. There was an anonymous question asked, and then I'm gonna restart the Zoom meeting once again. Okay, so this question was addressed to Jesse. It says, you have outlined a lot that you have been involved and have been able to give voice to a small population of sports groups. How will you work to broaden that base to an entire student body?
So I don't necessarily think that, you know, while my student body is the athletes, and it's not, I've never thought that it's just doing things for the athletes. I also think it's about, you know, incorporating the larger student body, and how can the student body get more involved with athletics. And that's that kind of disconnect. It's like, just because you're an athlete, that means that anything to do with athletics is kind of, you know, your area. And that's just not true. You know, students don't know when they can go and use the swimming pools. And I also, and you know, that's something that every student should be able to use. Every student should be able to use, you know, the tennis courts. So why are they locked on weekends and stuff? You know what I mean? Like, small things like that I've seen from working with athletes is why we have that disconnect. So it's breaking down those small disconnects. You know, why don't we have commuters coming on campus or staying on campus until 5 o'clock to stay for some of these meetings? You know, why don't we have, you know, people in theater that are, you know, going and, you know, supporting, you know, like, just that, you know, the diversity council meetings and stuff like that. And it's just this disconnect between all people on campus. Breaking down those disconnects, and that's why I want to build these connections. And not just like stay in these little groups. Is, you know, building these connections is what is going to bring us together. You know, understanding that athletes don't just have to hang out with athletes, or they don't just have to go to athletic events, that, you know, if they are interested in something else, that they can go there and that they're going to know people in those meetings. I feel like that's the hardest thing. Why would I want to go to a meeting that I know nobody in? But if you already know these people and you're already meeting them through some other way that Senate is encouraging, you know, you're going to be more likely to go there. You know, why would athletes go to a Senate meeting unless, you know, something big comes up? Because they don't know anyone in those meetings. You know, there's no incentive to get them there. And I think building those connections, breaking down those barriers between people, and kind of and building that community within each other is the best way we go about that.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. So I'm going to go ahead and restart the meeting. I'm going to allow for the 2 individuals who have their hands raised to ask their questions, and then we had 1 anonymous question, and then we're going to be wrapping up the debate for tonight. So if you can all just rejoin, thank you. All right, so I'm going to allow for Alyssa to ask their question.
Thank you. So my question is, how will you focus on empowering underrepresented communities on the Whittier College campus?
And then we'll allow for Grace to answer this question first.
I think this is a really, really important question. I think that there are a lot of minority students within campus, and how do we support them, the marginalized groups? I think implementing student leaders to make sure they're going out and they're seeking those students, as well as create situations like the Gender Equity Center. I feel like we'll get resources for students, as well as the interfaith space, which we started on Senate, but I would love to finish and complete that. Making sure that students feel like they have a safe place on campus to announce their faith, as well as making sure that students are feeling advocated for in the Gender Equity Center. I feel like those are a lot of resources that we have and need to implement, that we can utilize throughout this next year. I feel like also a lot of the times these voices aren't heard, and we need to make sure they're heard and advocated for. And I want to promise all students that your voices will be elevated within departments and within Senate in general, and making sure that it's throughout the board that these voices are being heard.
Thank you, Grace. Jesse?
Yeah. So the first thing is that, and I've mentioned this before, and when I've been talking to people in person, I've been saying this as well, is that, you know, students, I don't think students are ever gonna, you know, be able to feel advocated for and actually get anything done unless students are supporting them. And it has to be, you know, students supporting students, and we don't get that unless, you know, we know each other. You know, the first way I see myself being a part of that is by being approachable and open, you know, by having people know that, you know, they can come up to me, and by, you know, walking around with a smile, walking around, you know, as someone who is approachable. And I think by being that kind of person and being that kind of, having that kind of charisma and attitude is going to get more people to come and speak to me directly, or even just speak to anyone else. But the first thing is that students need to support other students. And it's not about just, you know, getting people that are facing the same issues as you, but getting across to the student body, you know, what it means to be an ally and what it means to support other students with your platform and with your voice. All of us have different platforms and different voices. Some of us, you know, have huge social media followings and they can use that to drum up support. And some people know a lot of people in person. And it's about understanding that no matter how you know people or how many people you know, that you can do something and that your voice and your platform can be used for good. I feel like a lot of people don't understand what it means to be an ally, and, you know, what it means to, you know, support people in that kind of way. You know, we don't have to be facing the same problems to, you know, show empathy and realize that something isn't right on this campus. You know, if there are minority students coming, or a part of these minority groups coming and saying that, you know, and, you know, actually having the courage to come and speak up, which is the first, you know, toughest part, that they feel like that when they do come up, that something's going to get done. And I'd love to see that support. I'd love for someone to say, you know what, I didn't realize that so many people, cared about, my life on this campus. And that's what I want to bring. I want every individual person to feel like that they're cared for on this campus, and that the leader of their student body, doesn't just know them, but supports them and wants the best for them. And I think that I can get across to every single student on this campus. I really do.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. So the anonymous question I'd received before was very similar to that question. So I'm going to allow for Nona to ask her question, and then we're going to wrap up the debate.
Thank you. My question was, how will you advocate for environmental sustainability, especially in the wake of a pandemic that has unfortunately forced a lot of people to take on habits that are less sustainable due to health concerns?
Yeah, I'm going first, right?
Yeah, you can go first.
Yeah. So I think we already had a really good step, and I think the environmental bill that we just had read in Senate, and I think is going for its second reading next week, is a really big step in that, making sure that, things like single-use plastics we're limiting, and, we're always making sure that, we're always looking for the best alternative, because, I don't ever believe that the thing that we have now is the best thing for us. There's always something better and new, and I have that kind of optimistic mindset. But again, I also think that continuing the support for students, and I kind of forgot, I forgot to mention this earlier, but we have things like the food pantry that are super important for students now and in the future. Food security. Students that don't have the money for a decent meal are gonna go and buy takeaway, and they're gonna buy things that affect the environment in a negative way. If we can use the food pantry or even the ECC and kind of support those programs, so that we can give students reusable Tupperware and reusable stuff if they don't have those necessities at home. If they don't have cups at home to just drink water, we're able to supply that for students. And then even increasing those I think events through program board, like the make your own plate, the make your own cup, and making sure that everything we do, we're looking at making things that are reusable and sustainable. Sustainable water, sustainable energy, in the residence halls, going through Res Life. I think those are all, the best way of moving forward and making sure that we're doing the best for the environment that we can.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Grace?
Can you repeat that question one more time, just so I can have clarity?
Yes. So I said, how will you advocate for environmental sustainability, especially in the wake of a pandemic that has unfortunately forced a lot of people to take on habits that are sustainable due to health concerns?
Yeah. I'm drinking out of a water with the reusable straw right now. It's like a silicone one. I just want to say that sustainability is a really important part of my aspect within school. I've had the privilege to have these items, but I know a lot of students don't. Jesse said it, the food pantry is going to be a really big opportunity for students to get these food items that they wouldn't be able to afford. And I think the Whittier Green New Deal, the whatever environmental committee is presenting on Senate, is really a key step. But I know there's a lot more to unveil. That's just one step in a big river of what we can do. I believe that for me personally, I know sustainability is really important during this pandemic because people are using plastics and other single-use items. And I think during this pandemic, we need to still promote that sustainability and making sure that people are still implementing those things because this is still going on. We're still trying to fight this environmental battle. I believe that with my position on Senate, we can create that, collaborating with organizations, making sure that they are also implementing these sustainable ideas and making sure that they are actually doing what they're going to say they're going to do is really key to making sure that the sustainability is throughout the institution.
Okay, thank you, Grace. So thank you to everyone who asked questions. Now we would like to give 1 minute to each candidate for a closing statement. We'll begin with Jesse.
So I think that I would be the best fit to be the ASWC president, because I think, I'm gonna be approachable, and I want to be that face, not just around campus, but like for the campus. I want to leave this place in a better state than I found it. Not because I feel like I have to, but because I want to. There are a lot of different reasons that people on this campus struggle. Mental health, academically. Sometimes college isn't the place for people to be, but the expectations that they have to be here. And I would love, the majority of people to have the same experience that I've had. And I feel like I'm, the best person to kind of go through and make sure that these things that are limiting our students' ability to thrive on this campus are being dealt with, and that we're giving people the experience that they thought that they were going to get when they came here.
Thank you, Jesse. Grace?
I think one of the main reasons people should vote for me is because I am very driven. I make sure things are done. I don't just talk it, I walk it. I want to make sure that students feel like they are advocated for, they are communicated with, and then I can elevate their experience here at Whittier. I think I'm very approachable in the way I talk to students, and I hope I can present that throughout my candidacy within president. I think one of the things is that I have these experiences already as a second year to make sure that the students can making sure that students feel like they are advocated for, communicated with. I've already had experience working with teams. I already know the departments, like I have worked with them. This doesn't need to be an introduction. We can hit the ground running for all of these challenges that we face. I'm a leader. I make sure that I'm a leader. That's first and foremost. I hope that people vote for me because they know that they're voting a leader in that can lead their team and lead their advances and lead their advocacy. And I hope that with all the work I've shown is that I'm very passionate and I'm very committed to this school. This school is like a second home to me. I'm here from 8 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night some days. And I love this school and I want to make the difference in this school. And I want to prove to everyone that this institution, we can work with it. We can make sure that student voices are being advocated for. And I hope that can show throughout my campaign as well as the work I've previously done within Whittier.
Okay, thank you, Grace. So this concludes our ASWC presidential debate. We want to thank everyone who came out tonight to listen to our candidates. And of course, we wish all of our candidates good luck. Just a reminder for everyone, voting will be from the 16th to the 17th. It will be an online form through Engage. This form will be posted as a news article on the Senate Organizational Engage page, and it will also be advertised on our ASWC Senate social media. So if you're not currently following it, please do follow it. And we'd like to just wish everyone a good night and make sure to go out and vote. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.